Welcome to the Maj.Gen.S.L.Bhatia Memorial Oration for 2018. It is my privilege to introduce to you the oration. Over 35 years ago, I was one of a small group of students from St. John's who attended Maj.Gen.S.L.Bhatia's multi-religious death ceremony at his home at Nandidurg Road in Bangalore. I did not realize then that our paths would cross again. Over the last 2 decades, I have curated his museum and delved deep into his archives, and I have been touched by his noble spirit. A prolific writer, he did not sacrifice quality for quantity, and his writings reveal a depth of understanding across disciplines that I can only marvel at. Maj.Gen.S.L. Bhatia was born in 1891 in Amritsar, Punjab. His father was an eminent surgeon who practiced in Lahore, where Maj.Gen.S.L. received his early education. In 1910, he went to Peterhouse in Cambridge in the United Kingdom and obtained his degree in medicine. It was there that he befriended A.B. Hill, then a demonstrator in physiology and later a Nobel laureate in 1922 for his work on the production of heat in muscle contraction. Theirs was a lifelong friendship based on mutual respect. When the tragic war to end all wars broke out in 1914, Maj.Gen.S.L. volunteered as a surgical dresser on board the HMS Guildford Castle, which ferried the wounded from France to England. Duty first would be a recurring theme throughout his life. After completing his training at St. Thomas Hospital, he joined the Indian Medical Service and was attached as a regimental officer to the 105th Maratha Light Infantry in Palestine as part of the Egyptian Expeditionary Force. He received the Military Cross in 1918, the only doctor to do so that year, for refusing to abandon his medical post under the face of withering enemy fire. He then transferred to the Civil Department in 1920, first as Professor of Physiology and Hygiene in Grant Medical College, Bombay, and subsequently as its first Indian Dean, a post that he held until 1941. During much of the Second World War, he worked as the Deputy Director General of the Indian Medical Service and was awarded the Companion of the Indian Empire in 1945 for this work. After independence, he built up health services across the country as Inspector and Surgeon General in Madras, Hyderabad, Bombay, and Assam. He lived a life among people of history we can all recognize, and his contributions to independent India was truly remarkable. As a single example, he was the chairman of the Pharmaceutical Inquiry Committee that chalked the map for India to transition from total dependence on medications manufactured abroad to complete independence in this field. This was no mean achievement, and we reap the benefits of his foresight today. It is therefore all the more remarkable that he continued to be at heart till his death, a simple, deeply humble man. When he retired to Bangalore, his life was no less hectic. He continued to contribute in every way he could at the university, in hospitals, to the state government and socially. So why should we remember him at St. John's? The founder dean of St. John's, Louis Montero, described him as a tower of strength in the formative years of this institution. He started teaching the history of medicine to the early batches of St. John's until his failing health prevented him from continuing. In 1971, he made a gift deed to St. John's of his last large property in the fashionable Banjara Hills of Hyderabad to ensure the continuance of his legacy to St. John's. The Department of the History of Medicine remains the first and only endowed department of the college. He also endowed St. John's with his lifetime collection of books, papers, and pictures related to the history of medicine. I have often wondered why he chose St. John's over an institution where he worked and is also revered, namely Grant Medical College, Bombay. Perhaps he found in Dean Louis Montero a kindred spirit. Perhaps in St. John's he felt that he found a place where his bequest would be truly honored and treasured. In 1974, the History of Medicine Museum was formally opened with a full-time lecturer. The department has had the benefit of many passionate people who have attempted to sustain his legacy, and I would like to specifically remember those who have spent time working and sustaining the museum that he started. Professor Prakash Shetty, Professor Kotare, Dr. Manuel Fernandez, and Dr. Chitra Solomon. Maj.Gen.S.L.Bhatia was, in the words of Dean Louis Montero, outstanding as a teacher, scientist, administrator, and above all, a humanist. Today we honor this man, an officer, a gentleman, a patriot, a visionary, but perhaps above all, a truly good human being. Welcome to the Bhatia Oration. I'd now like to call Dr. Radhika to come and introduce our speaker for the day. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Radhika Hegde, and it's my pleasure and honor to introduce to you our speaker for this afternoon, Dr. Mark Lingley. Dr. Mark is an internationally renowned musicologist, a historian of modern India, and an ecological economist. Born in Washington, D.C. in 1937, he studied at Harvard and Columbia University. He is a member of Humanist Association of Boston and has served as an assistant Humanist chaplain at Harvard. He is a visiting professor at many renowned universities like Columbia, Oxford, University of Kerala, and Istanbul Technical University. He has also served as the university chairperson in the School of Economics at the Central University of Hyderabad. He has written on Mahatma Gandhi and some of his associates. Professor Lingley has written for the Gandhi Research Foundation an account of what Gandhi said and did about health, nutrition, hygiene, and healthcare. Today's talk will include an abstract commentary, some suggestions as to how the cultural heritage of Gandhi's example, in certain respects, could be put to good use for improving healthcare in India now that the government intends to invest more in it. Please join me in welcoming the Gandhian, Dr. Mark.
So, my title is a question. Which parts of Mahatma Gandhi's message about healthcare are useful today? Anyone who observes the rules of health will not need to knock at the doors of doctors from day to day. This precept of Gandhi's harmonizes with the concepts of individual swadeshi, individual swaraj, and corresponding duties in relation to every kind of right that people may have or may hope to get. In this context, a right to health care paid for by the government in the USA. Yes. The precept is an exaggeration if it's taken to mean that people who observe the rules of health never get sick. But if healthcare providers would rather have more healthy clients and fewer sick ones in the next few years, then evoking Gandhi's charisma together with this precept and some elaborations of it may be a good auxiliary way, especially when his 150th birth anniversary is celebrated next year, of persuading people to observe rules of health. This talk will be mostly about some of his precepts relevant to health care, including preventive measures. He is supposed to have remarked on one occasion toward the end of his life, "My life is my message." So I will include some precepts inferred from what he did, as well as from what he said. He said that in the teachings of each prophet, there was a permanent portion and there was another suited to the needs and requirements of the times. I think his own teachings about health and health care include some points of permanent validity and some which are quite relevant to momentary issues of now and the next few years, as well as some mistaken points. It's because I have written a comprehensive account of what he said and did about health, nutrition, hygiene, and healthcare, all four together, that I have been invited to give this talk. The account is available via GandhiFoundation.net, where it's accessible under articles. I will give in this talk an abstract commentary, and at the end, some tentative suggestions for various kinds of stakeholders in the healthcare system. You can improve on that last part of the talk, certainly insofar as India is concerned. I'm from the US, and I'm certainly not an expert on healthcare in India. That's why the title of this talk is a question and not an assertion. So here's a list of what my account of Gandhi on health describes. Two pivotal times in his life, in 1888 and again in 1908-09, when he wanted to earn an MD degree and become a professional doctor. The evidence from 1908-09 came to light just a few years ago and is unequivocal. The reason why he didn't take the course and get the degree was that he found out in London in 1909 that live frogs would have to be dissected in order for him to learn physiology. I recoiled in horror from it. His meretricious critique in Hind Swaraj of Western doctors was due to sour grapes. He had lost that vocation. On the ship taking him back to Africa, he wrote that pamphlet in such a fit of passion that when his right hand became cramped, he would write the next page left-handedly. The slants of the writing showed us, yes. Gandhi scholars know also that the main secular ideal with which he inspired himself and his sons was that of rendering service to other people. Well, healing them is a great way to do it. Evidence that after deciding not to become a doctor, he nonetheless administered medical treatments throughout the rest of his life. The evidence is overwhelming, and it shows that his vocation for health care was deeper than for jurisprudence, which he had studied not because it was attractive to him, but only for the sake of becoming qualified to become a divine, like his father. This picture represents a big part of his adult life, not an auxiliary part. Some successful treatments administered by him are described in the long account. We have, of course, no statistics, but some of the anecdotes are impressive. His own resilience, for example, in some of the fasts, was superb, and it seems clear to me that he could stoke up resilience in others, especially when the treatments were intimate. For instance, administering an enema, examining carefully the stool, and then cleaning the patient himself. Maybe one reason for the good psychosomatic effect was that he would take no fee. His determination that the person he was treating so intensively must get well was crystal clear in cases where the treatment was so intimate. Evidence of an incipient, though shallow, interest in modern chemistry. Modern in those days, of course. He owned in the early 1930s 10 substantial books on chemistry, but he never gained more than a few bits of what they could teach. His chemistry teacher back in secondary school had been appalling, giving him lists of long words to memorize without explaining their meaning or ever demonstrating anything. At least he knew that he didn't know. That is what this picture signifies. Examples of how he used the words quackery and quack. Some of the examples are amusing, and the citations, when taken together, reveal nicely a problem of cognitive dissonance in his attitudes, especially during the first 2 decades of the 20th century. In 1908, in an essay about a crime wave, published in Gujarati, our duty, in regard to social stories, is to search out the hidden causes and suggest permanent remedies. It is quackery, vital, to apply ointment to a boil. The infection should be traced to its source and effectively treated. In 1909, in a letter to an Englishman from London, I accepted the invitation of the Peace and Arbitration Society to speak to them on East and West. It came off last night. The following are the conclusions, blah, 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 blah. Quackery is infinitely preferable to what passes for high medical skill. 1912-13, in letters to Gokhale. One word from the quack physician, meaning Gandhi. Ample fasting, strict adherence to 2 meals, entire absence of condiments of all kinds from your food, emission of pulses, tea, coffee, etc., regular taking of food and baths, regular brisk walking, blah, blah, blah. And you will get rid of your diabetes and add a few more years than you think to your life of service in your present body. Hopefully died a year and a half later. 1913, in the concluding chapter of a book-length essay in Gujarati on health, Western medical science is based on inconclusive experiments. Most of it is quackery. 1921, in a speech inaugurating a national medical college oriented primarily toward traditional Muslim Unani practices, I have nothing but praise for the zeal, industry, and sacrifice that have animated the modern Western scientists in the pursuit after truth. I regret to have to record my opinion based on considerable experience that our occupants and bodies do not exhibit that spirit in any mentionable degree. They follow without question formulas. They carry on little investigation. The condition of indigenous medicine is truly deplorable. Not having kept abreast of modern research, their profession has fallen largely into disrepute. I am hoping that this college will try to remedy this grave defect and restore Ayurvedic and Unani medical science to its pristine glory. I hope that this college will set its face absolutely against all quackery, Western or Eastern, and that they will inculcate among students the belief that the profession of medicine is not intended for earning fat fees, but for alleviating pain and suffering. It seems to me that in these last remarks, the cognitive dissonance is overcome, and Gandhi challenges correctly all the various kinds. Some Western-type doctors whose medical expertise he esteemed. They included Ranjivan Mehta, a good friend of his for more than 40 years, Thomas Allenson, an unorthodox MD in London in the 1890s who deeply influenced him and advocated vegetarianism, whole wheat bread. Gandhi had whole grain rice served in his ashrams. Exercise, fresh air, puritan baths, and no tobacco. Allenson said it causes cancer. Lancelot Parker Booth, who in Africa in the late 1890s trained Gandhi in paramedical work and in a hospital and in the military ambulance corps that Gandhi led. The next 2 slides show how well Gandhi recalled many years later, 1890s, 1940s, many years later, some kinds of information which he expected to be of use to an ambulance unit during the Second World War. 1. General anatomy, including description of the internal subdivisions in the abdomen, the prominent bones, the arteries, and the veins. 2. Descriptions of the ordinary wounds, such as are sustained on the battlefield, and the various types of bandages for them, on the skull, the abdomen, the fingers, the legs, and so on. 3. Tourniquet for arresting bleeding, as part of the curriculum, and also extracurricular improvised techniques such as with a pebble. 4, the method of treatment in the absence of medical apparatus, for instance, warm ashes in the absence of boiled water. 5, primitive remedies in the absence of medical aid for drowning, snake bite, and scorpion sting. Stretcher drill for carrying the wounded or sick persons and making an emergency stretcher with a gun or a stick and a jacket. Marching by thousands in regular formations and marching drill according to the rules. Erecting tents in a battlefield within a few minutes. Rules about the use of water, how and when to construct latrines, kitchens, etc. He has done all that. And he says, it may be that something is being omitted in this list of mine prepared from memory. Most of it is covered in the book written by Kettle. Many things are also to be found in St. John's Ambulance. We did have all these books in our library at Sabarmati. Bijan Chandra Roy, a top figure in the development of Western medical practices in India. I don't have to talk about him here. Ahmed Ansari, after whom a ward in Charing Cross Hospital in London is named. It is well known that he and Gandhi collaborated on political matters. The next slide shows that he was also sometimes directly involved in providing health care to Gandhi. This is a urinalysis report prepared by him in 1924. He prepared a whole series, about 20 of these, day after day, reporting how the chemicals, so on, standard kind of thing. M.P.T. Gilder, a cardiologist who on several occasions between 1932 and 47 attended to Gandhi and Kasturba and went with them into detention in Pune during the Second World War. G. Raj Mehta, who was no less prominent than P.C. Roy. The next slide is about an autogenous vaccine for Kasturba, which was prepared at G. Raj Mehta's request in 1939. If you see there, the Streptococcus, Micrococcus, Friedlander in the middle there, yeah. 6 weeks long, interval between the injections, 4 to 5 days. Yeah. This was high cost, high grade Western medicine. Yes. And the last of the 6, Sushila Nayar, who influenced Gandhi just as much in the 1940s as Allinson and Booth had back in the 1890s. Soon after Gandhi's assassination, she went to the U.S. to study public health at Johns Hopkins. The next slide shows her together with her mentor there, Walt Hartman. Gandhi, when released in 1944 from detention, was in such poor health that he seemed likely to die very soon. It would have been impolitic for the Raj if he did it while in detention. He then wavered as to what kind of medical treatment to seek. He told a friend at the end of November 1944, Ramesh is a very nice person, but he failed to reveal the wonders of Ayurveda to me. He is hardworking. He tries to compete with allopathy. A great deal of diligence and experience is required to compete with allopathy. I have grown very weak. Sushila Dane, of course, recommends her line of treatment. I am still keen on getting well with the help of Ayurveda or my own methods of treatment. Let us see what I decide to do. End of November. Early December. Dr. Sushila Nayar assures me there is nothing physically wrong with me except that my old friends, the hookworms in the midlife, have not left me. 1 month later, 4th of January, 1945, I am reaping what I sowed. I went on taking Ayurvedic medicines without thinking and had to suffer the consequences. I am now getting rid of the poison. I am daily improving and getting strong. He was, of course, unaware of the numerous 21st century case reports of heavy metal poisoning due to ingesting such medicines. But he knew his own case history, and he had by now a wealth of observations of Sushila as a medical practitioner whom he could never suspect of greed, as she had never charged anyone a fee. She had been right about how to cope with the cholera at Sablecrown in 1938, etc., etc. She was, in my humble opinion, a first-rate doctor. My own experience has been that Ayurvedic doctors are unwilling to have their wares subjected to double-blind testing, which I used to be in a position to get for them, even though I'm not a doctor. And such testing is indeed very expensive. Maybe a good compromise would be to subject those wares to phase 1 testing and to control of production quality and let the ones that apparently do no harm be sold just as freely as diet supplement pills are sold in the U.S., yet with some restrictions on the claims about them that are allowed to be made in cabinets. Gandhi's book, Key to Health. This was a thoroughly revised version dictated to Sushila during their detention in Pune of a book by him on health, which had been published in 1913 in installments in Indian Opinion and in Gujarat. Here is his list of topics covered in Key to Health, together with page numbers in the first edition of the English translation of it. So we have the human body, we have air, water, boiled water, water and religion, food, nourishment of the body, categories of food, milk, cattle slaughtered for meat, so on. This is his medical treatise, right? Skimmed milk, blah, blah, blah. Condiments, very bad. Tea, coffee, cocoa, very bad. Intoxicants, very bad. Opium, very bad. Yes? 2 columns, 1.5 columns. Yes? And here comes brahmacharya, 3.5 columns. Very good. Yes? That's the physiology part. Now is the cure part. How to cure all these problems. Earth, water, akash, Sushila writes, ether, maybe, yes. Sun, air. Earth, water, sun, air. Earth, water, fire, air. Yes? It was due to the heritage of traditional Muslim theory that Gandhi thought of organizing the discourse in part 2 under the 5 headings of earth, water, akash, which Sushila was at a loss to translate, sun, medieval Western language, and fire, and air. You see, he still didn't have modern chemistry. But he had a clear grasp of the benefit of getting enough exercise. Here's the kind of thing he would say. Apart from working on land, the best form of exercise is walking. Our fakirs and sadhus are very healthy. One reason for this is that they do not use horses, carriages, or other vehicles. Their journeys are always performed on foot. Walking results in rapid circulation of blood in all parts of the body, promotes movements in every organ, and strengthens it. One should remember that the arms move during walking. A walk, to be worth the name, should cover 10 to 12 miles. Those who cannot do this regularly can take long walks on Sundays. Yes? In 1947, he said, and this is worth harping on now that so many of us spend too much time sitting in front of a computer screen, that for a person engaged in intellectual work to do also a substantial amount of daily physical work will serve to improve even the quality of his intellectual output. His focus on hygiene. This is generally well known in India. Less well known is that the characteristic but artificial baldness of the Mahatma was originally for the sake of his personal hygiene. At the outset of his first jail term, he noted with satisfaction that in the prison, the latrines and bathing area were washed and disinfected daily, but he was nevertheless worried that he might get scabies, and that is why he had his mustache and the hair on his head shaved off. He had been quite handsome before then. From the 1920s on, he took guidance from George Vivian Moore's books on rural sanitation, books with titles like Essays on Rural Hygiene, Colonial and Camp Sanitation, Dry Methods of Sanitation, and The Earth in Relation to the Preservation and Destruction of Contagion. In just a moment, however, we'll come to Gandhi's enthusiasm for mud cures. His vegetarianism, this is also well known. A quick example of his views is that in 1942, he estimated as follows the foods required daily by adults of sedentary habits. Fresh fruit according to one's taste and purse, but preferably including the juice of 2 lemons or limes. 2 pounds of cow's milk, 6 ounces of measured with law of cereal grain, wheat, rice, margarine, 3 ounces of cooked leafy vegetables, 5 ounces of other cooked vegetables, 1 ounce of raw vegetables, salad, some salt added afterwards according to taste, 1.5 ounces of ghee or else 2 ounces of butter, and 1.5 ounces of pork or sugar. While living in Wardha in the mid-1930s, just before setting up Sevagram Ashram, he, quote, made inquiries in the villages round about to see what vegetables were eaten by the villagers, and such vegetables were brought to Manavadi, where he was in Wardha, and carefully studied for their food value, for for the amount of nourishment that would be extracted from them, and for their beneficial and harmful properties. All who ate those vegetables at Maj.Gen.S.L.Bhatia were asked to recount their experiences. Having experimented thus, he came to the conclusion that several of those vegetables had all the necessary nutritive elements and could be eaten with benefit by everybody. Sounds to me like good low-cost research. Those folks at Maj.Gen.S.L.Bhatia were sensible eaters. They were not gourmets. His critique of medical methods cruel to animals were otherwise contrary, in his view, to the spirit of vegetarianism, not only vivisection and the deliberate infecting of sentient beings for research purposes, but also vaccination. There were, as you know, lots of other people in the anti-vaccination movement. It was a tragic mistake for India, and even for Sabarmati, where children of 3 members of the ashram died of smallpox during the 6 weeks before the Salt March, and yet Gandhi defended on the very same day their father set out with him on the march his opposition to vaccination. Sometimes he argued that vaccination was ineffective, but the real reason for his stance was that he thought the vaccine was obtained by a method cruel to cows. In that light, it is ironic that according to J.S.L.'s detailed account of the manner of inoculating for the smallpox in the East Indies, 1767, the account was addressed to the College of Physicians in London, although as a fellow of the Royal Society. There had been in Bengal an elaborate, widely practiced, and prevailingly successful Indian method of obtaining and administering autogenous vaccine to prevent smallpox from becoming fatal. So this is a double tragedy here, the loss and the refusal. His practice of nature cure, quote unquote, featuring hydrotherapy and mud cures. He never stopped admiring the books by Louis Kuna and Adolf Just, which he had initially read upon receiving them as a gift from Marcel's father-in-law. I doubt, by the way, to claim that Kuna's hydrotherapy was natural. He and his clinic in Leipzig are shown here. It doesn't look like nature to me. The kind of mud cures that Adolf Just sold would be relatively more expensive nowadays, as real estate costs are relatively greater now than they were 100 years ago. Where are you going to put this? Moreover, Gandhi said in a chapter of his autobiography praising nature cures that those who purchase Just's book on the strength of this chapter should not take everything in it to be gospel truth. A writer almost always presents one aspect of the case, whereas every case can be seen from no less than 7 points of view, all of which are probably correct by themselves, but not correct at the same time in the same circumstances. And then many books are written with a view to gaining customers and earning name and fame. Let those, therefore, who read such books as these do so with discernment. Yes? Have you noticed, however, the recent article in Nature Microbiology about a newly discovered class of antibiotic extracted from microorganisms living in the soil? This class, dubbed malacidins, allegedly kills certain superbacteria without engendering resistance. When Gandhi was battered in 1908 by someone who felt he had compromised too much in negotiating with General Smuts, well, the healing of the wounds was slow, and he got impatient. He told Joseph Doak, who was looking after him, that if he could get a plaster of clean mud on his face, he was sure it was help. So off I was sent, son, with spade and bucket to clean away the topsoil and get uncontaminated lower earth for the plaster. We made the mud plasters, and my mother applied them. Well, do we remember the consternation of the doctor? But in 2 days, Mr. Gandhi was sitting out on the veranda in the study armchair and eating fruit, which he couldn't do before because of the facial wounds. Even though Gandhi in the 1940s came to trust Sushila's knowledge and skill more than that of any non-Western type healthcare provider, he nonetheless thought that nature cure methods could be of use to poor villagers. In the next few slides, I'll provide some details. In 1944, he said in his native Gujarati to a colleague who was dealing healthcare-wise with an epidemic in the village, "You will soon get lots of drugs, but they will not be very helpful. Revive people's knowledge of nature cure remedies. Local medicinal drugs should be made available. Give rice water. If you mix jaggery with it, it will provide more energy. Teach people the rules of hygiene. If food is stopped to people suffering from fever or diarrhea, and they're put on boiled water, more than 50% of the cases will be covered. You must have received the suggestion sent by Kishore Lalbhai and Sushil Levane. I have suggested only the simplest one. In 1946, he spent 9 days in a certain village setting up and directing a nature cure center, which he then left in charge of a designated medical instructor and a designated administrative manager. His medical notes from that stint have been preserved. Here are some of the instructions he left for carrying on without him. The treatment administered here is to be limited to sun bath, hip bath, friction bath, kuna bath, mud poultice, massage, fomentation with hot water. However, Ramanama is the king of all treatments. This latter kind of treatment could, I think, work only for Hindus and people with great faith in the Mahatma, not for most Muslims, etc. For them, some other ways of making good use of their cultural heritage to stoke up their psychosomatic resilience would be appropriate. Here are some excerpts from Gandhi's comments in regard to a few of the clients, villagers, treated during his 9 days at that clinic. I would advise this. She should take sun bath in the nude, followed by a hip bath and a friction bath in cold water. The diet should consist of only fruit juice and milk or buttermilk. She may possibly be cured if she has faith in Rama. If she does this much regularly, she is sure to get better. Complete cure is rather difficult. Okay, another one. Urine will pass regularly if he is seated in hot and cold water by turns. He should drink boiled water and take fruit juices and buttermilk for nourishment. I am in my 80s. My daily Tonilzosin and Dutasteride tablet, pricey though it is, may well cost less than would preparing cups of hot and cold water considered by turns. What is the use of removing cataracts from a poor person's eyes? One should live with it. Recite Ramanama, and when the time is up, depart with Ramanama on one's lips. If this cannot be done, she may be taken to a hospital and have the cataracts removed. I do not remember any nature cure treatment for cataract. Did she come yesterday? She should be given sun bath, even in this heat, so that she perspires and the boils dry up. I feel she might derive some benefit if she lies down naked with a wet towel on her head. While doing so, lying down, she should constantly utter Ramanama. She should be given all this treatment here. We ought to clean the boils from her and bandage. She should be advised about her diet. I don't see any way to reconcile that advice about the cataract with Gandhi's talisman for construction workers saying they should try to improve the lives of the very poorest. Gandhi's advice with regard to that old woman reminds me of the fact that a top British economist, Lionel Robbins, in an article on interpersonal comparisons of utility in 1938, cited a statement allegedly made by an anonymous Brahmin to the effect that he, the Brahmin, was 10 times as capable of happiness as that untouchable over there. No? Robbins argued that to regard different people's basic needs as being of equal importance would be, alas, unscientific, though ethical. Medical science is steeped in ethics, as economic science should also be, and a responsible doctor's decision as to how to proceed in a complicated case is often based on an informal estimate of the client's resulting quality of life. No? Maybe that old woman was weak enough to warrant postponing a cataract operation, but the rule without categorically looks to be like a mistaken call. How can a 2-year-old child be allowed to suckle? He should be given only fruit juice. He needs an enema, which can be done only here. Make the necessary arrangements. I add a footnote. I happen to know that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was nursed by his mother until he was 4 years old and had a very successful life. What has she tied to her abdomen? In the first place, she should not gird up so tight. She should lie prostrate or naked in a solitary place. She should give up eating bread and subsist on milk and fruit. Does she pass stools? With whom has she come? Does she have anyone at home? Very often it is indeed, in my humble opinion, important for the doctor to know about these latter kinds of circumstances. The most effective treatment for rickets is sun bath and taking milk mixed with fruit juices. He must get himself admitted to the hospital. If he's willing to do that and wants to have a note from us for the hospital, he may go with one provided by us. There is no other remedy for hernia. A strap belt can also be worn. If he does not want to do this, he should surrender to Rama and rest content. Yes? There's a good deal more. This is just a sample. It seems to me that Gandhi was beginning to learn what it's like to be a primary care physician prescribing treatments for strangers. His use of fasting as a nature cure technique. The long essay of 1913 includes the following remarks. We shall now consider remedies for these 4 diseases, blah, 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 blah. Treatment should begin with a 36-hour fast. And Kunda baths should be administered during and after the fast. The word fast as a noun or verb has often been often used without saying clearly what is meant. According to a review article written by 2 MDs in Berlin and published in 2013 in the journal Complementary Medicine Research, fasting is the voluntary abstinence from solid food and stimulants like caffeine or nicotine for a limited period of time. It depends on the person's ability to meet the body's requirements for macro and micronutrients during a limited period of either shortage or absence of food while using almost exclusively the body's energy reserves without endangering health. During fasting, intake of food in forms of vegetable broth and vegetable or fruit juice should not exceed 500 kcal per day. And when fasting is done properly, one should experience a good level of vitality and absence of hunger. That's a modern definition. Gandhi's concept of fasting for health was less clearly determined. Important to remember when he talks about it. Cutting down on one's nutritional intake in order to help cope with a fever harmonizes with the English proverb, feed a cold, starve a fever. And with a recent Yale University study opposing effects of fasting metabolism on tissue tolerance in bacterial and viral inflammation, 2016, which implies that it's good to eat well if you have a cold, but ample nutrition may aggravate a bacterial infection. The study was based on experiments with mice, not people, but even so, maybe Gandhi was onto a bit of valid traditional wisdom in Indian as well as Western culture, which Western medical scientists have been slow to appreciate properly. However, in 1925, Gandhi advised readers of Young India to fast if you are constipated, anemic, if you are feverish, if you have indigestion, you have a headache, you're rheumatic, you're gouty, you're fretting and fuming, you're depressed, or if you're overjoyed, and you will avoid medical prescriptions and patent medicines. I imagine he knew, of course, that about the Ayurvedic tradition of Langa, that is, of fasting a day or so, perhaps once a month or even once a fortnight in order to maintain. His teaching that chastity is essential to good health. I disagree, and I presume that you do too. I would grant in an honest debate that some important aspects of his marriage improved, as he would later insist had been the case after the vow of chastity in 1906. And I would, as an ecological economist, grant also that the recent U.S.-style promiscuity, notably among middle-class teeny boppers, has had some unfortunate consequences, not only healthcare-wise, but also by way of fostering an unfortunate anything-goes attitude of unbridled consumerism and ecological recklessness. Yes? But still, I think it was tragic that Gandhi rejected in 1935 Margaret Sanger's request that he support the cause of the NGO Planned Parenthood, which she had founded. In 1916, she came to India to make the request personally to God. It seems to me that if he had agreed to countenance publicly the use of condoms as a form of self-discipline suited to men for whom chastity is temperamentally unfeasible, there would be less destitution now in India than there is. He did, in 1946, recommend the use of condoms privately to a member of his ashram. The story is too long to tell here. 2 key points of it are that Sushila told Gandhi that the man's attempt, not always successful, to maintain chastity was endangering his wife's sanity. Sushila confirmed this to me 50 years later when I met the lady herself also. And Gandhi had compassion for the lady. The evidence is clear in some of his extant letters to her and her husband. Yes. Some examples of how he would sometimes set aside his own dogmatic inclinations. There are several examples in addition to the one I just mentioned. There was, for instance, the time in 1946 when he led a biologist whose moral stature as a social reformer he greatly admired, slice open a living frog in order to teach nurses to save a problem about vaccine. Yes? He had said in a letter to that biologist, though there is a resemblance between your thought and practice, practice in mind superficially, I must own that yours is far superior to mine. He trusted that fact and let him perform a vivisection. And in the severe conditions of malnutrition and epidemic in India toward the end of World War II, Gandhi sanctioned substantial exceptions to his precept of vegetarianism. In 1944, he told a healthcare worker in a village stricken by an epidemic, to meat eaters you may unhesitatingly give meat soup. Soup means water in which meat has been boiled. These things should be served hot after boiling them. This is not the time for doing our religious duty and propagating vegetarianism. His approval and use of euthanasia. The actual use was on a calf. The approval for humans was unequivocally clear and was categorical if, he said, recovery is out of the question and the patient is lying in an unconscious state in the throes of agony. End of quote. Gandhi should not, in my humble opinion, have said in an unconscious state. It seems to me that if the patient is in the throes of agony and if recovery is out of the question, then a conscious state should be no bar if the patient has expressed a clear preference for euthanasia. I think that was a slip. His choice of palliative care for Kasturba in February 1944, when she was very sick and weak, Gandhi was himself personally attending to her personal hygiene, and the doctor said that maybe a series of injections of penicillin could defeat the infection. An hour or so before her death, he declined to, quote, drug her even on her deathbed. She died as she wished to do with her head on his lap. That's palliative care. Books that he is known to have read on various other health-related topics. An important one was Tribhuvandas on giving birth. Gandhi recalled in the mid-1920s, I studied things necessary for safe labor. I read Dr. Tribhuvandas' book and I nursed both my children according to the instructions given in the book, tempered here and there with such experiences as I have gained elsewhere. My careful study of the subject in that book was of inestimable help. You undoubtedly know that Gandhi performed the functions of a birth midwife for the birth of his last child, and it was a difficult birth. Also important was at least some of W.J. Moore, a manual of family medicine for India, and maybe some or all of Alexander Ambrose, everyone his own doctor. In a letter sent to a colleague in 1934, Gandhi said, I want a good guide for village workers to be written. The conception is to produce a book after Moore's family medicine for everybody his own doctor. Let me ask you, do you think that nowadays, with the wealth of technical knowledge available on the web, MBBS healthcare providers and small clinics, subservient neither to big hospitals nor to pharma corporations, can be good family doctors? And let me mention to you the following facts, published last month in the New York Times about the U.S. Although hospitals account for about a third of all medical spending in the U.S., this sector of the economy has actually been in decline for some time. There were in 1981 over 39 million hospitalizations, 171 admissions per 1,000 Americans in that year. 35 years later, the population has increased by 40%, but hospitalizations have decreased by more than 10%. And the number of hospitals has declined from 5,500 to 5,500 this year, from nearly 7,000 in 1981 in the U.S. This is because hospitals now seem less therapeutic and more life-threatening. In 2002, researchers from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimated there were 1.7 million cases in 2002 in the U.S. of hospital-acquired infections that caused nearly 100,000 deaths. Are standards of hygiene in hospitals better here than in the U.S., generally speaking? And finally, as I mentioned at the outset, Gandhi's concept of corresponding duties, the performance of which bestows real value on theoretical rights. He said that a political manifesto demanding a right is incomplete without emphasizing the necessity of performance of the corresponding duty and showing what that duty is, and that in the matter of improving one's health, lethargy is a sin. The human body is both a Kurukshetra and a Dharmakshetra, insofar as it is a Dharmakshetra, it is one's duty to keep it in good shape. Yes. He always insisted that avoiding disease is far better than getting and curing it, and so it's important to be clean, control your diet, get substantial daily exercise. He understood quite well that the natural function of our limbs is to perform physical work, and not take more medicines than you really need. This seems to me such a vital message for affluent people today that the preventive health care provided to them should, I think, be designed to impress them a lot more with this message than it currently does. And physical work means work done. The equation is work done equals force times distance. That's physical work. Let me mention, apropos my main theme of making good use of the cultural heritage of Gandhi's message. In fact, pivotal to the haggling between people in affluent countries who say things like the American way of life is not subject to negotiation. That's what George Bush said in 1991, really. And who insist that the less affluent countries are overpopulated. That's the problem, they say. And the other side says are the people in the densely populated countries who say that the big current and forthcoming problem of the Earth's declining capacities to provide the natural material goods and services needed by humankind is due to excessive per capita consumption and waste in the more affluent countries. This is the debate, going back and forth, yes? Well, the fact I want to mention is that these two factors, population size and rate of per capita consumption and waste, are equally important. It's a simple case of A times B equals C, where C is correlated with the resulting ecological damage. Not NA times B equals C, where N is unequal to 1. It's simple. This times that. Both are equally important. Now, we don't want a rapid population decrease. Indeed, part of your work is to prevent that. But a fairly rapid decrease of the per capita devastation factor could be achieved if the people consuming and wasting at above average rates would tone it down. They shouldn't, however, hide their virtue. They should try to set examples in such a radiant and yet clearly feasible way, radiating moral common sense, that it might calmly persuade other people to follow suit in their feasible. Yes? Goodness knows we need better crowd psychology than the economists cultivate in us with their bull and bear markets and the resulting extremes and Ponzi schemes and panics. There should be an implicit message, and sometimes explicit, since doctors have medical authority. I'm doing this, you do that. Yes. And here's a great example in the making. During the last few weeks, more than 700 physicians, residents, and medical students in the Canadian province of Quebec, members of a group called Médecins Québécois pour le régime public, Quebec Doctors for Public Health, have signed a petition saying, in French, we, Quebec doctors who believe in a strong public system, oppose the recent salary increases negotiated by our medical federations. The only thing that seems to be immune to the cuts in funding public health care here in Canada is our salaries. Contrary to the Prime Minister's statements, we believe that there is a way to redistribute the financial resources of the Quebec health system to promote the health of the population and meet the needs of patients without pushing the lower paid healthcare workers to extremes of overwork. The nurses. The petition calls for the salary increases to the MDs to be canceled and the money being redistributed throughout Quebec's healthcare system. Here are two lists of some things which I think ought to be done internationally, and in support of which Gandhi's message can be cited. I will tag the lists micro and macro by analogy with a corresponding distinction in economic theory. Micro is for clinicians. Take time and exert effort to persuade clients of their duty to maintain health as best they can. Wield more medical authority in advising them about proper hygiene, exercise if they're monitored, nutrition, obesity, the dangers of various narcotics, and maybe even the psychosomatic benefit of good moral condition in relation to society. A spiritual slant like that would certainly be done. Review the sets of pills being taken by affluent elderly patients. Take time to explain about not taking antibiotics for a cold and so on, and talk up when appropriate the human organism's self-restorative capacities. Make pulse calls to poor people who need them, and practice and advocate palliative care and euthanasia, both of which are, as I've shown, demonstrably here. Now I come to macro for public health officials. This is just a tentative beginning of a list. I'm no expert. Understand that in quite a few countries, fiscal sum A, a certain amount of governmental money, well spent soon on improving nutrition and preventive health care, would result in saving later far bigger fiscal sums, B, C, etc., for treating diseases due to nutritional deficiencies, infections, obesity, etc. And this is merely the fiscal aspect of the matter, not the more important human welfare aspect. And therefore, ramp up preventive and primary health care and render it more feasible for physicians to get to know their patients. By, for instance, letting primary care physicians in hospitals average 3 appointments per hour rather than 4 or 5, which is what is required of them in the USA today. Take advice from and update the information in David Triggle's article, Medicines in the 21st Century, or Pills, Politics, Potions, and Profits, Where is Public Policy, in volume 59 of Drug Development Research, and prohibit all forms of pharma salesmanship in med schools. Develop capitation schemes of payment for health care in countries where they're not yet prevalent. American capitation for health care with the insurer, seamless insurer. Then you have a long-term vested interest in preventing. In India, consider carefully the advice in Sujata Rao's expert book, Do We Care? India's Health System, 2017, and the relevant investigative journalism of Jean Drez in regard to North India. And evaluate quasi-Gandhian ideas and accept or adapt some of them from various more or less unorthodox MDs and relevant organizations such as B.M. Hegde with his World Academy of Authentic Healing Sciences, Andrew Weil at the University of Arizona, Bernard Moen with his, quote, Lost Art of Healing, Otto Buchinger, who died in 1966 and with his therapeutic fasting in Germany, Ashok Vaidya with his version of reverse pharmacology, and Sharmila Bhatgal with her hijack team at Palvita Biomics, Maj.Gen.S.L.Bhatia with his Universal Healing Program, and Gilbert Welch at the Dartmouth Institute for Health Policy and Clinical Practice, Bhushan Bhargava with Integrative Medicine. This is coming out of walls all over the place. Thank you for your
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful talk on an aspect of Gandhi that I think very few of us knew before you came here. On behalf of St. John's, I thank you for accepting our invitation to come and speak here. And I'd like to call Dr. George and Dr. Tony to the podium. Correct. This is a part of the Maj.Gen.S.L.Bhatia Oration. And so can I ask Dr. George, the Dean of the Medical College, give the plaque on this occasion to Dr. Bhatia, Dr. Tony, who's the Dean of the Research Institute, to give you a memento of Bhatia written by his wife. And now Radhika will just come and deliver a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. I would like to express my thanks to the Dean of SGMC, Dr. George, and special thanks to the Chief Dean of SGRI, Dr. Tony, for letting us use the Pope Hall Auditorium. Our appreciations for the IT team in helping us live stream the entire event. Sister in charge of Annex 3 for the help and special considerations. Dr. Rebecca for her help with catering. Manohar for stepping up and helping us when we needed it the most. And finally, my thanks to Mr. Ali, Mr. Prakash, Manjulika Vas, Dr. Alinda Tins, and Dr. Maya Vas for all the support in making this event a successful one. Thank you all for coming. Please join us for tea.